But what a treat we have for you right now. We've been waiting for this. So, there are people in life that you're able to sit down with and have glorious conversations about film craft. And we have the ability to then create a more perfect reality through the device of film. That person, for me, is Natalie Bullock Brown. Natalie Bullock Brown is the proud director of the Documentary Accountability Working Group, a collective she helped to found in 2020, which releases a values-informed framework for documentary filmmakers that emphasizes care, consent, and collaboration as a pathway to ethical storytelling. When I asked her what I was at the early stages of trying to figure out what this year's double exposure would be about, and she said, and it didn't take long. I don't know where you got this, and she forgot that she did this. That's how brilliant she is. She said, I want to have a conversation with Raoul Peck about Silver Dollar Road. Now, I can understand a portion of it. Of course, Raoul Peck is brilliant, and who wouldn't want to be in conversation with him, right? Right. Yes. But the second thing is, we both live in North Kakalaki. And Silver Dollar Road, if you don't know this, is based in North Carolina. So, without further ado, I want to invite Natalie, who then will introduce one of the most consequential filmmakers of our time. Natalie.
Thank you, Lana. And good afternoon. Is it evening almost? Yeah, it's 4 o'clock. So good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I cannot even begin to tell you how much of an honor it is to be up here with Raoul Peck. I'll tell you briefly that I attended Howard University for grad school in their film production program. And one of my professors was Haile Garima. And Haile, of course, was buds with Mr. Peck and invited him to one of our classes one day so that we could see one of Mr. Peck's films, Man by the Shore. That was, I'm not going to say how long ago that was. It was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. So this feels like such a gift and full circle moment to be with this brilliant director. You, I'm sure, are familiar with many of his films, including I Am Not Your Negro, the series, HBO series, Exterminate All the Brutes. I could go on, but his most recent film is Silver Dollar Road. And I'd love to hear from you so that I'm not doing a lot of talking. You want to set up just what the film is about and how you were drawn to this story in the first place.
Hi, everybody. Well, this is a particular story like a lot of my projects. In fact, I was approached by ProPublica and Amazon, who were trying to make a film, 2 films in fact, about this story. The story came out in, I think, The Atlantic and another magazine, and Lizzie Presser, the journalist who researched the story, wrote the story for the ProPublica. The story was bought by Amazon, and they wanted to do a narrative film and a documentary film. And they started working on the narrative film. Lizzie Presser and ProPublica had also a video team that would document the almost 3 years that she spent there. And Lizzie spent a lot of time with the family, spent a lot of time with the people in that county, she visited scholars, etc., who have worked on the thematic of land lost, and especially black land lost, and not only in North Carolina, but all over the nation. You know, that's not a problem located in the South. And in the urban area, it's called, gentrification. And this city is known for that as well. So they approached me, and I said, let me see the material. And in fact, I don't want to give too many details, but they asked me to produce it, and then I saw the material and say, well, there is really a great film in it, and I chose a young black filmmaker to direct, and because Amazon was taking a lot of time, I can't begin to tell you what the documentary field is today. It's a mess. And then that young director got another offer, so I let him go because it was important for him. It was his first narrative film. So at that point, I was so involved, and I told them, okay, you know what, I'm going to direct. So they were happy, and so now the film takes another shape. And by the time I decide if I'm going to make a film with this family, I better go there and meet them. And there was the anniversary of the grandmother, 94 at the time. And so I knew people from the whole family from everywhere would come. And that was a perfect occasion to meet everybody, to understand what were the dynamics of the family, and how this whole story that they have been carrying for 30 years is playing on them, on their lives. And then I just decided I would bring a crew with me, because we are making documentary. It's about life. It's about what's happening. And I'm not talking about authorization from Amazon, money from Amazon. I said, no, we can't let that go. And it's one of the opening sequence of the film.
So, before
Sorry,
we go,
I've been talking and talking.
Before we go any further, just so that all of you can get some context, if you haven't seen the film, can we look at the family clip, please?
Elijah Reels was my great-great-grandfather. He farmed the property, had a family upon the property, and unfortunately, in 1939, he lost the property due to back taxes. His son, Mitchell Reels, then purchased the property in 1944 at the courthouse doors due to back taxes. Unfortunately, in 1970, Mitchell died without a living will, and the property then became the heirs of Mitchell Reels. And that's when all our legal problems started. Heirs property is property that has been left to an onslaught of family members. So there was a document that was conveyed that my grandmother and her siblings did in fact own the 65 acres after a court proceeding. So it was ruled that the 65 acres did belong to the Mitchell Reels heirs.
Clap, 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 clap. I really, really encourage you to watch the film if you have not seen it. It's a beautiful treatment of just a horrific series of events and circumstances that the Reels family has to endure. And so I want to, ask you, because this is such a sensitive story in terms of what the Reels family experienced, trying to hold on to the land. How did you approach the family, especially since you became the director after there was another director? I'm not sure when you met them, but how did you frame what you wanted to do, and even, you know, basically let them know that you wanted to bring a crew for the 95-year-old grandmother's birthday?
Well, in fact, the family was, by that time, after 2 or 3 years, they were counting on this film. And that was an important moment for them. Lizzie, and it was really great to see, you know, she's a white girl. She spent, you know, and I could see that she was welcome in the family as if she was a girl of the family.
She was the ProPublica.
Yeah, she was the journalist, you know, and I could see she did her homework. You know, that's what you do. You're going in a community, you're going into a family, you make sure that they trust you after a certain while. You come with open hands. You're not bullying them, you're not above them. You know, it's about understanding them without judgment. And she did her homework. So for me, it was an open door, and they knew who I was. They have seen I'm Not Your Negro. So it was much more like I was the big hope, you know, the big black hope in that sense. But so, you know, they really opened the door for me, you know, where I would have had to take much more time for them to trust me. The trust was already there. So it was much more for me to do my homework and then understand the situation as good as Lizzie did. And so that was that. And then, you know, I'm from Haiti, and I saw my family. You know, I didn't feel I was a foreigner coming in. Gertrude, you know, she could have been my grandmother. So I felt at home, and you know, the food, the people dancing, the stories, you know, I knew and I recognized that milieu.
Yeah. One of the things one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this film in particular is because of the work of the Documentary Accountability Working Group. We call ourselves DOG, to just get it out of our mouths. And you know, one of the things that we think a lot about and try to help filmmakers navigate is the ethical issues that can come up in anyone's filmmaking practice. I'm wondering if there were any ethical dilemmas that you experienced as a result of telling this story.
Well, I would not call them dilemma. It's you know, issues or moments or problems that you encounter in any, you know, artistic endeavor that you start. The most problematic situation is the situation of making documentaries today in this world, in this country in particular, where you had the last 10 years an invasion of people wanting to see documentary as a money-making machine. And usually they don't care about ethical approach. Right. And it goes very deep into how contracts are signed, how in this particular case, because they bought the rights of the family story, they need it for the narrative, but you don't need it for a documentary. But they did buy the rights of my characters, which is already pose an ethical problem.
Can you explain that? Can you break that down?
Well, first of all, because I came late in the process, so I was not able to see all the contracts. But they realized, because I started with the film right away, without even having my contract, but I knew, you know, they trust me, I trust them to a certain level. So I started, you know, we start producing. And at one point, I needed to see the contracts. And I think some lawyers and some dark corners just realized they didn't renew the contracts. You know, they were losing their options. So they renew both options, you know, documentary and narrative. And the narrative was way behind. They have changed screenwriters, I don't know how many times, etc. So when I realized that, in fact, they were paying the two main characters, the two brothers, which is
What
a
are their
no-no.
names?
Melvin
And like
and
Curtis,
Curtis.
right, thank you.
Sorry, I've made 2 more films since then. So Melvin and like Curtis, which are, the sense of that film, even though you learn about the whole family. So my job was to get their trust because both of them, in a different way, are still in a, you're still reeling from what happened to them to spend 8 years in a prison cell for nothing. So,
And I'm
yeah.
so sorry. I just want to let, if I explain, it'll give it away. So maybe I won't explain. But just know that, like Curtis and Melvin, who are main participants in the film, they, yes, go to jail in relation to the family trying to hold on to this land that they own, that they rightfully own. Just want to explain that.
So, like Curtis in particular was the one who I think suffered more deeply and you could see and he said himself. That's why I'm happy and thankful that he was able to talk about that himself. About his suffering, how it's hard for him to think about that every day, and we were able to capture that moment. So I didn't feel like I'm shooting a victim and he's telling me his story. He was a human being, standing up and telling his own story. So, but in documentary, you can't pay the people that you're filming.
Typically,
That's a
right?
no-no.
And who says it's a no-no? Like,
Well,
where did
that's
that come from?
that's what we learn as a documentarist. That's the core of what you do. To respect the people you work with, to respect where you're going, to make sure that the people know what you are doing before you can even take your camera out. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for a photographer, There is a respect, there is an ethic. That's why we call it ethic. And in that case, and I think most of you know by now that a lot of today's documentary, like Netflix, Amazon, Apple, people, if you are interviewing a witness, some of them come with their lawyers. That's contrary to any ethical approach to a documentary. If you have a commodity relationship with the person, that's already spoiling the whole exchange.
Can I ask you, because one of the things that DOG advocates for, actually, is compensation of participants. And I totally understand what you're saying, because absolutely this is what we're taught, that you don't pay participants. But aren't there other ways that you can compensate them or make sure that they're taken care of?
That's a different situation and that's a different conversation, and most filmmakers I know do that. Mm-hmm. In particular, we find ways to do that. Yeah. And on many levels. But it cannot be, you give me your testimony and I pay you.
For that, right.
That's something totally different.
Yeah.
And by the way, the family itself has had no problem with that. They knew that the most important things for them was for the world to learn about their history, what they were still going through. They wanted their voice to be heard, beyond Carteret County, because they were like in a bubble where they were being abused. Mm-hmm. Nobody will listen to them. Mm-hmm. So to be able to go nationally, even further than that, internationally, that was what counted for them. And they were very clear about that.
I'm so sorry to step on your words, but I'm wondering about, one of the things that another main participant, Kim, I think she's Melvin and Lai Curtis's niece, and she's the woman that we saw in the clip that we just showed, but she talks about how the family went from lawyer to lawyer, and I guess there were journalists even that all exploited the family because they had such a need. They were almost desperate to get the story told. I'm sure that you had that in mind, that you knew about these other attempts to tell their story or to try and basically profit off of it. How did you, or did you need to maneuver around that sort of sensitive, like that raw spot at all?
No, because we were totally transparent. Lizzie was not doing it for the money. ProPublica was not doing it for the money. I had other films I was making. So that was not the issue. It was the money, the story that was important. And by the way, one of my first clash with Amazon, and when I say clash, it's not that we fought. It just heated discussions. Was that I was, I don't know, 6 months into it, and they were still not giving me officially the green light. And then I asked for a Zoom, and everybody was around the table, the whole staff of Amazon in charge of the documentaries. And I told them, I want your decision now, because I cannot go back to North Carolina and tell those people that they still have to wait to know if the film is being made or not. Because now you're using me and my credibility to continue that, that have been taking like 2 years at least.
Yeah.
And I'm dealing with real people, so let's stop. It's not a game. It's not a commodity. It's not Hollywood. It's about real people's life. And that meeting, some of them, were crying, and then I got the green light the next day. And it's like, I mean, and I'm not talking bad about them. It's just in the process, you become numb to reality. Mm-hmm. It's about the business, but you have to remind them that it's about real people. It's their life. It's not a game for them.
Yeah. I want to show the other clip that we have, but before we go to that, and then we're going to go to Q&A, what you just said about you have to remind these distributors, broadcasters, whomever, about the fact that you're dealing with human beings. You're of a stature where you can have that conversation, right? And people are going to listen because they want to work with you. I'm wondering, for the filmmakers who are in the house who may not have the same stature that you do, what would be your advice about how to advocate for your participants in a way that protects and takes care of them?
There are no recipe. The only attitude is to be sure of what you're doing, why you're doing it, what are the reasons, and fight for it. That's it. You're talking about stature, but it's to get to that stature is a lot of fight. I had, and I never let anybody tell me what my film should be. It's a decision, and I have had moments where I said no to money that I was given because I didn't want to change what the film was. So it's a choice that you make very early on in your career. And by the way, I never call it career. Mm-hmm. At some point I left cinema because I thought I could be more efficient, elsewhere. So it's really something that you have to decide and talk through every day in what you do.
And continually you're making decisions.
Yeah, and you have to reassess it again and reanalyze it. And there is not a single line. There is not a recipe. The only recipe you can have is say, why am I doing films? Why am I writing a book? Why am I a musician? What is the purpose of that? Yeah. Is it I just want to be an artist, or I just want to make money in this, or sometimes it's a mixture of many things, and that should nourish your decision, because you will be always confronted with, other people's wants or other people's dictation or other people's money. So you need to know what will be your response, and that response is never once for all. You have to reanalyze the situation. You can make compromise, but compromise that doesn't touch the center point of what you are defending,
Which is
That's
the
it.
humanity of the participants.
By example.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I can give you another example that exactly touch what you're defending. At one point, Amazon, and again, I'm quoting Amazon, but I could quote Netflix, I could quote all of them. They wanted to do, how do you call it, showing to people, focus group, thank you. And I said, do your focus group, but I don't want any notes from your focus group. That's what I told them. So they did. The response were great. But there was one thing. They still came, weeks after weeks, said, yes, Raoul, but we need, if you could say at the beginning that the two brothers were in prison, that would be better because some people would understand better. And I didn't understand why. But I say no, because the film is finished. The film is edited. And then the next week they would come, can you put a carton, a card at the beginning to say, well, like Curtis and Melvin were in jail for 8 years for nothing, etc. And then I still didn't understand why this insistence. And then one night, in my sleep, it dawned on me. And so I asked for a Zoom meeting. And I say, and I knew why I was saying it. And I say, the film has been edited this way for one particular reason, and I'm not going to budge from that reason. It is I want the black audience to watch this film at ease and not to be afraid of anything, not to be waiting for the curve where you will hit in the face, where the paternalists will come at one point, and because what I understood is, again, it's not that they are bad people or whatever, but that's the system. They wanted the audience, and in their minds, it means the white audience, to know from the get-go, are they victims or criminals? Again, it's not conscious. It's not conscious. Because when I say that, again, I could see all the eyes were teary. Because they just realized that's their reality. And I say no, and I didn't know why I was blocking, but then I understood. It was that. And the film starts with a family gathering. So that's what you do. You learn to know the family first, because they are not defined by 8 years of jail. So you have to know them, to come to love them, to understand them, to laugh with them. And then the drama comes. I would write a narrative film the same way. I don't say from the get-go, they were in jail for nothing, so what? It's paternalist, and you're gonna, cry, and all those poor black people, and so you have to break those categories, and so that has to do with ethic as well, and you have to be able to understand it yourself. For me, it was not clear why this insistence of that. It's because the system is already pushing you. They want to have the film in a nutshell in the first 2-3 minutes. But that's a way to control you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really appreciate the fact that the film gives context. It allows us to see the family as human beings doing what all of us do, and then what happens makes sense in context. right? Because it's not that, oh, like Curtis and Melvin must be criminals if they went to jail. No, we understand it differently, the way that you frame it and give us context.
And even purely on a narrative level and dramatically, when it's you, it's happening, your family, then when the drama comes, it's even stronger. Because it's not about a black family, it's about your family. Yeah. Your friend, because you know who they are by now. You are, 1/3 into the movie. It's a totally different, feeling.
Yeah. Can we play the reunion clip? This will kind of...
Coming out. All right. Yeah, coming out. Yeah, you read.
So is there anything you want to say about that scene before I open it up for Q&A?
Well, first of all, it's a moving scene for me. I almost cry again. It was a great moment. I didn't shoot it. It was the team with Lizzie. And it tells you also the importance of archive and this exists. It's even if it was shot in a shaky way, etc. But that's life. That's real. Yes. And thanks to all that archive they shot over the 2-3 years, I was able to make that film, and it's the collaboration of all this.
It's beautiful. All right, I'm going to open it up. Anyone have a question? Ooh, a lot of questions. I'm just wondering if I'm supposed to go around with the mic, but that's what I'll do. I see you first.
Hello. Thank you very much. It's more a comment than a question, actually, about what we just talked about and what you just said about Amazon.
She said questions.
I think there is something, so I'm French, as you can hear. There's a big difference between European and US education to films, and it's patience. And I think that in Europe we are very patient, and we don't want to know at the beginning what's going to happen. And the problem with the Netflix and the Amazon and this way of thinking is that we lose how to learn this patience when you are going to discover a story and a film. And I don't know what is your thought about this. But
well, I would wish it was just a matter of film culture, but unfortunately it's a matter of how the business have changed and how selling product is becoming the main reason to finance those films. And I don't know if you've seen, when you're watching a film on Netflix, you can choose to watch it in 1.5 Why do you have something like this? So, so it's beyond that, It's about we can't lose the audience. We need to keep them connected. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with filmmaking. It has nothing to do with narratives. And now it's the money people who get. It's about that. It's about logarithm. It's about all that. So it's really hard for the younger generation. I guess some of you are going to make film, and it's a fight you have to have, and it's also question, how this whole system is functioning. And I won't even go into the financing world, what the foundation are doing, how PBS, ITVS are all being attacked. And that was before the election. Senator Ted Cruz basically accused PBS to have too many, how do you call that, LGBT, blacks, women. Yeah, that's all diversity approach. How come we have that many black, women, LGBT films? It has to be more balanced. So that was before the election. Yeah.
Which means more white filmmakers.
I don't know.
More white men.
And but that's where we are. So it's going to be multiple years of fighting. I'm afraid.
I see you. Okay. Yes.
Hi. Raoul, your film is so beautiful. I want to start with that. I'm just really curious about your process of how you engage with the participants, like your process, like when you're with them, is it more question-based? Is it more dialogue? Do you observe more? I'd just love to know a little behind the scenes of your approach when you're engaging with them to be able to tell this beautiful story.
Well, again, I always try to avoid recipes. The only recipe I could tell you would be common sense. If you go into somebody's living room, be polite, try to listen more than talk, be prepared for all and everything and nothing, but be prepared, know what you're doing, know your purpose. And then, it's an interaction. It's not, you can't come into somebody's world and assume that you know better. I know how I'm going to tell your story. You can have ideas, but they will lead you to the right path. And sometimes there are conflicts, so you have to deal with the conflicts as well. So there is, again, it's like George Orwell, because I'm doing a film on George Orwell now. It's common sense. That's all it is. And we are losing our common sense right now. Anything goes. There is no boundary. There is, and you can be, president even if you have abusing half your territory. No.
Thank you. So kind of an extension to that question, but I'm wondering, in the moment when you're interviewing or talking to the participants and it gets very emotional and heavy, when do you decide that, okay, this is time to turn off the camera or turn it away? And common sense, but also beyond that.
Yeah, it's common sense. I'm sorry. There is one of the last scene of this film. Okay, I'm sitting in a small shack with Leigh Curtis, and I know that's the major interview with him. I don't call it interview, conversation with him. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's very difficult to go beyond the recrimination that they have done wrong to him, etc. and I can see is traumatized, in everyday life. But I know I need his voice. I need, and how he is. So I choose a moment, and he's the last conversation I had, because I knew I had to keep him last, to give him more time to adjust to me, to trust me. And I would, during, the weeks, and, I would go walk with him. I would go this, and it's a preparation. It's like, preparing a marathon, so you put everything on your side. And so at one point, he started crying, and I could say, stop. But I forget the camera as well. It's a human situation, and I know if I cut, I will only have that cry. But I let the camera roll, and then he smiled. He said, yeah, I know what I have. I know why I'm like this. And then you see a man that knows that he's traumatized. It's a totally different situation. But if I was, rapid to say, no, cut, no, you let it flow. And by the way, the trust is, I'm not here to make you look bad. So the trust go both way. You let me film you, and I'm totally open to you. I cry, I laugh, but if you cut that and show it like this, you're not, you how you say?
You're not taking care.
Yeah, yeah. I let you down. It's not, you cannot go into a scene like that and say, well, I have a film to make, and if I cut here, I have a wonderful ending. And no, I want them to be proud as well. They are the reason I'm here. So I have to be overly protective of them. The same way, if I shoot a narrative, my actors, what they do in front of the camera is like letting them throw, from the ceiling, and they throw themselves, and they know I'll be down there to receive them. If you can't establish that, there's nothing coming through your films. And it goes for documentaries as well.
Thank you for doing this. I'm curious about the way that you've talked about ethic and approach to care. I'm wondering if you can take an inventory of how that approach may have changed over the span of your career. And I'm curious, I guess you've already kind of started to address this, but how that approach has maybe morphed or stayed the same with your transition from narrative to documentary and back. Like, what have you learned? How has your approach stayed the same or changed?
Well, first of all, I'm not the best example, because I had my pattern, or the way I, work in this industry. I had made choices from the beginning, and I stick to those choices until today. Today, it's easier for me to impose my will. I still have, last cut, final cut, whoever I'm working with. It's more difficult when the film costs more money, but that's I don't go, at my age now, I do not want to go into any film if I don't have the final cut. So it's, again, I went into film because of politics. Film is just a medium for me to fight. It's not, I don't make film just to make film. It would be boring for me after a while. Or if it was money, I could do, scary movie 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I went to film school. I learned how to do that too. So it's a choice. You have to, and I'm pretty sure if I didn't stick to that choice, I would be somewhere else today, and probably maybe not making films, because they have access to many other filmmakers that can do exactly the films they want you to make, you know. So that's the only recipe I can tell you. You fight each film one after the other, and they are all different, and you don't have the same people in front of you, but you have to establish, your rules, otherwise we're not obliged to work together. I'm not obliged to take your money, but there are rules. So if we agree, we can work together.
Hi, I have a question about your career. It sounds like throughout your career, you've always had the ability to honor who you are at all times. And I think, I'm not in the film industry, but I know in other industries, people, particularly black men and women, find it very difficult and extremely challenging to hold on to their power. How were you able to do that early? And for you, because I can tell there's something much deeper in filmmaking, how do you determine if it's a success? When you look at a project and you're like, what is happening with you?
Well, before you can do this, you're already on the next film.
Right.
So
Or when
no,
you look back and you're like,
yeah,
this
you
really.
you can't afford to I think that's real for any filmmaker. You basically, by the time the film is finished, you're relieved that somebody's watching it. You're relieved that some people understand it. You're really relieved that the film, circulate. So you're not really in that, unless, again, you're in there for different reasons. You want to be in the limelight, etc. But, usually that's not your principal, emotion. You're relieved that, okay, that screening went well. Okay, oh, they like it. But that's it, And at the beginning, what... The beginning of your question, that was something else you said.
You talked about having, what I took away from your comments was having the wherewithal to honor who you are and your principles and values, and doing that from the very beginning. And I don't know if it's parents or something in your environment, but where did that come from?
Well, then that's what I tried to explain before. I went into that from politics. I was privileged I went to Berlin. I was 17, in a city where most of the world was as well. It was the East and West border during the Cold War. And Berlin West was welcoming, union people who were expelled from Brazil, student leaders who were expelled from Iran, etc. The ANC people were in Berlin. Those were my elders. So I was educated in that sense, like you put your strength in the liberation of your country and the liberation of your people. And we were all in solidarity with as well the German who were fighting, I don't know, Reagan wanting to put his missile in Germany. So we were demonstrating together. We were learning together, etc., etc. So that was the cornerstone of who I was and what I was doing on this earth. There was a dictatorship in my country, Haiti, until 1986. By the way, largely supported by the U.S., the politician on one side were talking about democracy, but outside they were supporting dictatorships, and so-called, they wanted to eradicate communism, even in countries where they had no clue what communism was. Okay, so that was our reality, and until I was in my 30s, that was my life. You go, you study, and you go back home and fight and die. That was it. So film, photography, writing, that was a privilege. That was, something that you should be happy to be able to do. So I never use it for my own purpose. It was always in a collective démarche, fight.
Hello, thank you. Thank you again for being here. I had a question about your relationship process. How long do you spend with your participants off camera to build trust with them, to build a relationship with them, in order for them to be comfortable telling their stories, spilling their lives out in front of camera? How long do you spend with them, especially ones who have a different truth than your own, I guess? How do you massage those?
Well, first of all, I told you I felt at home. So I had zero problem to spend, time in the room with Gertrude, because it was like my grandmother. And there was time where we don't have to speak for something to happen. You show that you have time. You're not there to get something from them. So, and by the way, that's one of the few documentary where I do have to interact this way with people, because first of all, it's a project that was already had begun. I came to, make it happen, but there were a lot of interaction that existed before. Like I told you about Lizzie Presser, who really did a great job of being there and felt at home, and they received her as a member of the family. So I could ride on that as well. And but again, it's always about taking time. The people are not a commodity. They are human beings like you. So, the same way you would not like people to come to you or invade you or whatever, the same, politeness you have to show them. There is, again, no rule. It's a matter how you feel the person. And if you're making film, I assume you have some sort of communication skills. You have to, otherwise you are in the wrong field. And that's, by the way, that's one thing that technology have erased a little bit. That because you can have small cameras, because you have, the installation is very quick. You can come somewhere. I remember seeing a Russian film about a guy doing film with homeless, but and he did it in a few weeks, but you could feel there is no connection whatsoever. He was just stealing images, and you can be in the face of the people, and technology today allows that. You can as a photographer, you can go somewhere and 100 pictures in 2 minutes, and then you go home and see what I've got. So there is an acceleration of this. Somebody was talking about the patience. Yes, there is no more patience about interaction. It has to be quick. Give me what I need from you. Talk. And if necessary, I push you to talk, or I trick you into, crying. So we are back to ethic. It's a matter of ethic as well. And if you don't have your own ethic, your own discipline, your own rules, they will make you do the most stupidest thing.
And it sounds like what you're saying is that the better you take care of the participants, the time that you give them, you offer yourself, instead of expecting them to give to you what you're not even really offering to them, it makes for a much better end product.
Yeah, of course. And it's about human relationship and not a commodity relationship. And when you say also off camera, yes, if you are the director, it's good the same way on a narrative. I make sure that I spend time sometimes with my crew, that I'm not just the director. And the same in the documentary, you know, you go, I hate sometimes to be around that big table where everybody, you know, because I want to concentrate for the afternoon shoot. But you do have to do it, you know, so that, you know, you are an existing person with your crew. So, and when you're filming a family, yes, there are moments, by the way, they offer you to eat, they offer you breakfast, or they are, so sometimes you say no, but sometimes you have to say yes. You know, you can't keep saying no because you're watching your crew, you're, you know, no, you have to be a human being as well.
One more question. Anyone? Diana. Could you raise your hand again?
It's so wonderful to have you here, and I'm curious, I know that you say you have Final Cut, and I'm curious when working with a place like Amazon, how much of the process are they involved in? Are you getting notes that you have to adhere to? Do you welcome those? Do you resist them?
Well, again, I react very badly to authority. That's the story of my life. So it's how they sing the music, you know. I get notes and I respond to them, and a lot of the time they are very good notes. But I want to feel that you really have seen the film I've made and not making these notes because that's what you have to do, or I don't know what, you know, issue you have. If you explain to me the problem that you have, and I do take in account whatever problem it is, because you are also a viewer of my film. So I'm making it for you too. So if you give me something and I can decipher it, what it is, because sometimes they can say, well, we don't like that scene, but most of the time is the problem is the previous scene, not that particular scene. You know, that's the magic of editing. You know, they don't always point to the actual problem. So my job is also to think that through and to understand what they are actually telling me them, sometimes without knowing what they are telling me. So it's always, you know, a sort of normal exchange. Is what I don't like and that I can feel right away is when somebody is trying to take advantage of me, or sometimes they try to take advantage because that's how it is. That's how they have been doing it with others. So I can sense that. And the example I gave you at the beginning about the putting 3 minutes of the summary of the film. Yes, I know that's what you've been doing for the last 10 years. No, I will not do it. And then, so we enter a discussion. And the final drive, by the way, is not that they write that in my contract, because they don't want any precedent. So it's always a back and forth with my lawyers to how can we put it that you and I, we know what it is, but it doesn't look like it is, you know? So that everybody can say, no, that's not true, we didn't do that, you know? So, but ultimately is that, you know? And by the way, I'm not, final draft means you let me make my film and we can have every discussion you want. But at the end of the day, if you can't convince me that this particular cut is detrimental to your interests, and if it doesn't make sense what you're telling me, you know, like again in this example of the beginning, because if I follow you, you will destroy the film I made. That I will fight. But most of the notes, by the way, they are okay. You know, you try to do something with them because you assume they are your first spectators, you know, so, and those are people who see a lot of films, they know their skills, etc. I'm not saying it's all bullshit, sorry my French, but it's, you know, you have to be clear that there is also a power relationship, you know, and you have to, you know, be clear of that.
Please help me thank Raoul Peck.
It went quicker than I thought.